You are much more than your autoimmune diagnosis. Just a few things that I want to share with you today, what I've seen over the last few years of practicing as a health coach. So I work with women who have been diagnosed with one or multiple autoimmune conditions, and these are some of the common things that I find that I wanted to bring to your notice. Right. So the first story of one of my clients. Her name is Palak. She's been working with me for more than a year, and when she came to me first, she was already dealing with several autoimmune conditions and related issues, chronic issues. The primary thing that she was actually struggling with at that time was actually eczema, hypothyroidism. She had been diagnosed, she'd been seeing a doctor. So while I never sort of ask any of my clients to stop whatever treatment that they're doing with their primary caregiver, primary medical professional, there's so many things that we can do. So when we started working together, we worked on lifestyle, we worked on diet, etc. And but the one of the main things that changed for her when we started working is the realization that she was not her eczema, she was not her thyroid, thyroid disease. She was so much beyond that, and as that became apparent to her, as we started working together, as she started realizing her own self-worth, her whole level of self-confidence increased, her trust in herself, in her own body to heal increased, and as a result she was able to make the changes that she needed, that her body was desperately asking for. Whether it was in terms of stress management, whether it was in terms of movement, whether it's in terms of giving her body the nutrients that it required to be able to deal with and handle the imbalance that was going on. The immune dysregulation that was at the core of many of her health issues, right? So that's often what happens when you realize that your identity goes much beyond a particular disease, right? And it may be any disease that you're have been diagnosed with. It doesn't really matter. You are so much more than that. And what I mean by that is, it's not just your diagnosis. It can be a career, it might be your work, it's the multiple roles that you juggle as a parent, as a caregiver, maybe for someone in your family, as a sister, as a daughter, your qualifications. All these, of course, make up who we are. They're all part of who we are. They are, the identities several different identities that we have, but they don't, none of these one single identity define us as a person, because we are so much beyond that, because our roles can keep changing, our diagnosis can change tomorrow, our qualifications can change, we can change so many things, but the person that we are goes so much beyond that. So the first thing that I want you to take away, and if that's the only thing that you take away from today's session, is that you are so much more than your diagnosis, and it should not stop you from doing what you enjoy. It should not stop you from finding out and trusting your own body, the symptoms that you are that you might be facing, and whatever else that needs to be done. The second thing is that your strengths and your values as a person does not change with any kind of diagnosis, because that remains the same. It's the essence of who you are. And in fact, this is an activity that I do with my clients, and they say immense benefits. It's about knowing what their character strengths are. There is in fact a particular institute called the VIA Institute, and I'll share the link below. You can go and check it up. It's a free character strength survey, and in fact the kind of health coaching that I do, which is based on functional medicine principles, we use a lot of character strengths training in that, because that defines sort of who we are, and also who we can be in the future, right? Because we are not static. We can change, we can upgrade our skills, while some of the core things will remain the same, including a set of values, etc. We can still develop and keep growing as a person throughout our life, right? So that's something that does not really get impacted no matter what diagnosis that you have, because what I find is that often we get so bogged down by the name of the disease, or just chasing what it is that we have. Of course, there's nothing wrong with knowing what it is we are dealing with, because that determines what our next line of action is going to be, what kind of treatments, what kind of medication that we sort of just only focus on that. We get bogged down by that, and if it does not pan out the way that we want to, then it becomes a problem, right? That's what I want you to try and avoid, because this is something that I've seen in my own life, in my own experience, and also as a health coach. When my clients are able to own up to who they are, it does not matter what their diagnosis is to a large extent. Of course, they keep on pursuing several lines of treatment and whatever else that is necessary, but that does not stop them from owning their strengths, from knowing their values and standing up for what they believe in, whether it's choosing a certain kind of healing modality, whether it's changing their diet, whether it's completely revamping their lifestyle, because sometimes that is required, right? In fact, whenever any person comes to me, I know that, and they also actually realize that there are certain changes that have to be made. And in fact, that's probably the most difficult part of dealing with an autoimmune condition, right? Because there is no medicine or pill that's going to, and it's not just an autoimmune condition, but it's any chronic condition, and no medicine or pill can sort of make it magically go away. Of course, medications, treatments can help you to deal with it better, can help you to manage the symptoms, reduce your pain and suffering. But at the end of the day, what you do in your kitchen, what you do in your life, how you manage your stress, how you manage your environment, matters a whole lot more. And it, again, irrespective of what the diagnosis is. And this whole journey can become much easier if you are able to recognize what your strengths are, what your values are, and if you can own them and make sure that you can use those and bank on your strengths to make those changes, rather than focusing on what can go wrong, right? Because again, research shows that just by focusing on our fears and doing something out of a place of fear is not nearly as effective as doing something out of a place of strength, right? When you are aware of your motivation, internal motivation, or why you are choosing to make those changes, you are able to actually stick through and sustain those changes for longer periods of time, maybe for the rest of your life, because some of you will have to do that. Some changes will have to be for the rest of your life, and it becomes much easier if you can sort of tune into what you really need and tune into what truly motivates you, right? So that's the thing. Your disease does not need to define you. It does not need to take over your life. There are, of course, certain times when it does seem to do so. It's happened, it happens with everyone who is struggling with a chronic health issue. But for the rest of the time frame, you can take ownership of your health to a large extent, right? Because starting with what you are putting in your mouth, that's where, in fact, we often start. Because the thing is that the other thing that you need to realize, that your immune system is responding to the environment that you're asking it to live in. That means your body is responding to the environment that you're asking it to live in. So if the environment that you're providing is extremely stressful, then it does not matter whether the stress is real or imaginary. It matters that your brain and your body thinks that there is an imminent threat, there is a danger, and it will respond accordingly, right? And unfortunately, that's how most of us are living our lives today. We live our lives in constant fear of the unknown. It can be fear of something that has happened in the past, and we visualize that it's going to happen again. Of course, we are also living in the midst of a pandemic. That doesn't really help. Any time that we are faced with any kind of danger that's which is real, that sort of adds to the pressure, adds to the stress. But it can also be a constant negative thinking, a lot of beliefs that you might be holding. All of these also act to the stress. And again, I want to reiterate the fact that your body and your brain does not know whether the threat is real. For example, in the case of maybe an ongoing pandemic, or it's the threat of an imaginary future, right, that you are envisioning, which may or may not happen. Irrespective of that, your body, if you're living in that kind of an environment, stressful environment, your body is going to react like that, right? In fact, one of the things that I often teach my clients from the first session is that you need to make sure that your body, give it provide an environment that is healing, which means that your body should and your brain should feel safe, right? They should feel that everything is okay. That when you sit down to eat, have your meals, when you sit down to eat, you should be providing an environment where your body feels safe to sit down, to produce digestive juices that are necessary to digest and absorb the food, right? So it is your responsibility to provide an environment where your body and your brain can sort of let down their guard. They can do the repair work that is necessary, they can do the healing that is necessary, the growth work that is necessary, whether it's at rest, whether when you're relaxing, or whether at night when you're asleep, right? Because these are extremely important parts of dealing with any kind of autoimmune condition or any other kind of chronic health issues. So again, it goes back to the point that you are so much more than a diagnosis, than a disease that you have been that you've been grappling with. Because again, in the case of chronic health conditions, and particularly in the case of autoimmune conditions, what often helps us, starts happening is that once you've been diagnosed with one autoimmune condition, you're on the spectrum. We call, in functional medicine, we call it the autoimmune spectrum, which means that there is some form of immune dysregulation, at the heart of which is some kind of gut health imbalance, microbiome imbalance. There is some kind of there's something wrong, or there is some kind of dysbiosis, as we call it, which needs to be addressed. Otherwise what happens is that immune dysregulation, where it mistakenly thinks that the human tissue is a threat and starts sort of producing antibodies. It can, if it's a thyroid, then it becomes a autoimmune form of hypothyroidism, which is called Hashimoto's, or the other form, which is called Graves'. It can become lupus. There's so many rheumatoid arthritis. If it's the joints, it depends on where the weakest link in your chain is in terms of your genes. But at the end of the day, it is what you get diagnosed with, right? And it can be multiple diagnoses over a period of time as the autoimmune disease progresses, right? Take the steps necessary today to either prevent any kind of autoimmune diagnosis in the future, or you can start to take the steps to deal with it, to heal from it, to reduce the symptoms, to reduce the severity of the symptoms. But it all starts with the realization that you are not your diagnosis. Your identity is not just that of an autoimmune patient, right? You are so much more than that. You are your strengths, you are your values, you are your unique self, right? You have your own characteristics. We all do. You are your quirks. All that makes you you. There is only one of you in this world, right? And it doesn't have to be only as a person who has been diagnosed with this autoimmune condition or that autoimmune condition. Because once you're free of all these shackles, once you're free of this kind of an identity, which holds you back, you are free to search for, whether it's better alternative solutions to your health issues, whether it's some areas of your life that you would like to work on. You are literally free. When my daughter went through a severe health crisis several years ago, she was diagnosed with eczema, and that seemed to define her life till I decided that it should not, right? It was just one part of her life. It need not define her entire life. Of course, it was a big part of her life, especially at that time, which sort of was affecting her day-to-day functionings. It was affecting us as a family, but it it did not mean that it had to define each and every part of her life and every part of her future. And I was determined to, as a mother, to make sure of that, which meant that we needed to think beyond that. But when we owned up to this, when we embraced this truth that we are much more than any kind of diagnosis that we may have, no matter how severe the condition, it freed us all up. It freed her up. It freed me up to look for better solutions for her. What are the other alternatives? That's how I found functional medicine in the first place. I literally stumbled across it in 2014 and became a functional medicine certified health coach, and I'm here in front of you today. So if there is one thing that I want to leave you with, it's this: you are so much more than your diagnosis. Do not let this hold you back. If you think that this is something that someone else needs to hear today, make sure that you share this with them. Drop me an emoji or drop me a comment and let me know what resonated with you in this particular session, and I will see you again soon.